Pocket pistols, 9mm versus a 38 special. What's the difference here? What's the difference in overall size, concealability, and effectiveness? Now, this is the first in a series, and we're going to test some ammunition today. We're going to test standard pressure to see what it does, and this particular pistol was donated to me by Ken. He's a viewer and supporter of the channel, so thank you very much. I want to give a little bit of rundown on some of the ballistic information I've seen over the years and what I know about them. But first I'm going to give a rundown about these two particular guns. They're very similar. This particular pistol weighs 12 ounces with the magazine in it. This revolver weighs 11 ounces, so very, very similar. Also, very similar amount of bullet travel. I measured in the chamber where the tip of the bullet is, how much distance from the tip of the bullet up to the muzzle, 1.88 inches. Same thing here, exactly 2 inches. So very similar amount of bullet travel in the guns. The revolver, sometimes you can take into consideration maybe 5% of your velocity loss to the cylinder gap, so it evens it out pretty much perfectly. So, difference between the two of these. Now the thing we got to think about is they're both very similar in bullet diameter, 0.355 versus 0.357, it's essentially the same thing. We're oftentimes within the same weight range. You know, it's very common to see a 124 grain 9mm, just as common to see a 125 grain 357 diameter 38 special bullet. Now what's interesting about these two cartridges, and here's a couple of examples here. This is Remington Full Metal Jacket stuff. But I've taken apart 38 special plus P rounds. I've taken the bullets out and weighed the charges, and I've weighed it to comparable same brand of 9mm and a similar bullet weight. And oftentimes what you're seeing is you're seeing the exact same powder charge of the exact same powder between a 9mm and a 38 special plus P. It's obviously a little bit less than standard pressure 38 special. But what you oftentimes see is the same powder charge, so what you're going to get is less pressure with the 38 special because it is a much longer case capacity. So one thing about the 9mm, I don't like to admit this, but it is a little bit better of a short barrel cartridge in and of itself because you have a fairly small, well, not small, but a modest amount of gunpowder compared to something like a 357 Magnum. And you're pushing the bullet into a pretty short case, so you're getting more complete burn out of a shorter barrel. And with a 38 Special plus P, you get a long enough barrel to burn up that powder, you would probably get about the same performance, same energy as the 9mm, but in a short barrel, not as much pressure there. So in order to make it a 38 Special compete with a 9mm, oftentimes what you have to do is put a lot more gunpowder in it, which does increase the recoil. Now what I've seen a lot of times, and I'm going to talk a lot about 38 plus P rather than 38 Special, just standard pressure. I'm going to do the plus P with 38 and standard pressure with the 9mm. A lot of people say, oh, that's not fair, why are you doing that? The thing you got to take into consideration is we're talking about 17,000 psi pressure with the 38 Special. 9mm, 35,000 is double the pressure just to begin with. That's the first thing to take into consideration. When we push it to a plus P, we're doing 20,000 versus 35,000. So a plus P 38 is indeed fair with a 9mm standard pressure, and in fact I would say it's not fair the other way around than what a lot of people say. The other thing we got to take into consideration is when we look at the 9mm plus P, because there's such a small case capacity, a lot of times what happens is the small, tiny amount of powder it takes to actually push it up above 35,000 up to 30, I think it's 37 or 38,500, is a very small amount extra powder to get it to plus P pressure, and oftentimes that doesn't equate to any increase in velocity whatsoever. As with the 38 Special, when we increase it from 17,000 psi up to 20,000 psi, because it's a larger case, less pressure, it takes more powder to get it up there. So what I've noticed is a lot of times with the 9mm plus P, there is no difference. Sometimes there is, but sometimes there's not. With 38 Special plus P, there's always an increase in power between standard pressure and plus P. Now, what I often see, I've went through a lot of ballistic information over the years, and what I've seen a lot of times is with 9mm and barrel lengths about this long, we're getting about 275, 280 foot-pounds of energy, and with the 38 Special plus P, we're getting somewhere around 225 to 240 foot-pounds. That's just basically average of what I've noticed over the years when I've studied a lot of different ammunition. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a series. We're going to use all standard pressure in this Diamondback because that's what it's rated for. But a lot of times you get these smaller pistols and they then the manufacturer doesn't even want you to shoot plus P. They recommend like a very low amount of them. A steady diet of them would be too much for a small 9mm. Now the biggest thing we want to get into when we get into this series is find out whether the difference in energy even makes a difference. I know for a fact, before I even run all of the tests I intend on running, is the 9mm is always going to have a little bit more power than the 38 Special across the board. There may be some that have more power in the 38 Special than the 9mm, but across the board we're going to have higher energy with the 9mm. First question is that going to make a difference? Because if there's not a really effective difference on ballistic testing, that extra energy might not be useful most of the time, and sometimes when you get extra energy, the only thing you're getting out of it is extra recoil, when something with less energy may have done the job just the same. I want to find out also what's the recoil going to be like. Is the mainspring of a semi-automatic, which will cushion a lot of that belt recoil, will that be more effective or less effective than changing out a grip? And I have probably the best grip for this is a nice big Hogue overmold grip. Is the mainspring or a replacement revolver grip going to be more effective for taming recoil? And we get into cost of ammunition. Everybody knows that 9mm is less expensive than 38 Special. However, when you get defensive rounds, you have to fire a lot of rounds through it. I think the standard, gold standard for that is like 200 rounds of whatever defensive rounds you're going to carry. Even if you go with something inexpensive like 50-round boxes of UMC jacket hollow point, that's still going to run you about $80 just to test your ammunition. As where you can buy one box of whatever you want in 30 Special and you pretty much don't have to test it. So the higher cost of ammunition is sometimes negated by the fact that you don't have to run reliability tests with your defensive ammo. Plus hand loading negates that also. Another thing about the ammunition choices is there's a big difference in variety. With 9mm, basically, with pistols like this, you got to stick anywhere between 150 and 124 grain. I mean, you can push it sometimes up to 147 grain. As for the 38 Special, we can do 90 grain, 100 grain, 110, 125, 130, 158, 140, 200, 180 grains, 148 grains. Bigger variety of bullet weights and a much bigger variety of different shapes of bullets. And another thing to get into, what we were just talking about here, is energy. Is more energy always going to be more effective? Oftentimes what you see in 9mm rounds is a hollow cavity smaller and rounded so that it will feed in a feed ramp. Oftentimes you have revolver rounds. Here's one right here, just to take an example, an HST, a gigantic hollow cavity. We're not going to have issues with hollow point clogging. So that may make a difference in effectiveness. So even though you have less energy, because it's a revolver, it's already set up to open up a hollow cavity a little bit easier. We get to capacity and reloading. That's kind of debatable here, because you're talking about 7 rounds and 6+1 versus 5. Reloads are a little bit faster in magazines, but you can get pretty proficient in a speed loader as well. And then concealability, that's kind of debatable, because yes, the automatic is going to be smaller. All pocket revolvers are always going to be smaller than like 380 or 9mm pocket pistols. However, the safety of a revolver, because of that long trigger pull, and these have been safety checked, a lot of pistols like this, I can pull it with the tip of my finger here. Okay, pretty smooth. That's something I cannot do with the pocket revolver. Just to give you an idea of how stiff that trigger is. Also, when we have pressure on the side of the cylinder, it's not going to rotate. So my main point of that is you can put this pretty much anywhere, any angle, and you're not going to have to worry about it in negligent discharge, as where something like this, you might worry about it a little bit. So I would say concealability is kind of a wash. It's kind of even because of the safety of the revolver. But enough talk. Let's go out to the range, and we're going to test some ammunition. And what I'm going to test today is the Full Metal Jacket Remington. A lot of my subscribers use this 130 grain Full Metal Jacket, so I went out and got that specifically for them. And then I have the 9mm 124 grain to try to keep it as comparable to the 38 Special as possible in bullet weight. So we're going to see what kind of chronograph numbers we're getting, what kind of accuracy we're getting on paper at 7 yards and at 25 yards. And we're going to go through the Juggernaut box, see what it does to the baloney, what kind of damage it does, and how far in water jugs we're going to get. And I'm pretty excited to see this, because I've been waiting for a while to get some rounds that might pass through all 6 jugs and hit the backstop, and we might get that with these. So let's go out to the range and get started with the testing. Alright, first in a video series testing where we're going to do 9mm versus 38 special in short-barreled handguns. And we're going to test the 9mm in this Diamondback DB9 versus 38 special in this Smith & Wesson 342 PD. Both these firearms weigh about the same. Amount of bullet travel in the gun is about the same. So we're going to see what we get when we test these different rounds of ammunition. But what we're going to do today is we're going to start this series testing just basic full metal jacket ammunition. And the 38 Special is a 130 grain full metal jacket. I hear a lot about that round. I've actually never used it personally before, but a lot of my subscribers talk about it quite a bit. So we're going to test that 130 grain and with the 9mm 124 grain full metal jacket. Now with this particular 9mm pistol, it's not rated for plus P, so we're not ever going to get into any plus P testing. And with most pistols of this size, we really don't get into plus P because they're not really rated for it, either that or it's not recommended that you shoot a lot of it through it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do the basic test that we always do through the chronograph, see what kind of accuracy we're getting, but instead of at the same time we're going to shoot from a full 7 yards without the chronograph, because this is a brand new pistol donated by Ken, and I'm very much appreciative of this pistol. He donated it to the channel, so we're going to see what we get for accuracy since I have not fired a single round through this pistol yet. And then as always we're going to go through the Jug or Not box, which contains a pack of bologna covered by 4 layers of denim, followed by 1/4 inch of medium density fiberboard and into water jugs. So let's get started with the test and see what kind of accuracy we're going to get from 7 yards between these two particular handguns. Alright, first up from 7 yards is the Diamondback DB9. I've never fired this pistol yet, but I'm just going to go for center mass and see what kind of accuracy I can get just doing a slow fire, just to see how this gun groups. Pulled the trigger, but I didn't feel anything go on, so we might, yep, I didn't get a rounded chamber the second shot. Oh, we have a round stuck in the mag, that's what it is. The magazine dropped. So my hands are a little bit large, so I'm probably hitting the magazine release with my revolver type grip. I'm going to try to avoid that, keep my thumb up a little bit. Alright, it appears that we're out. And so far so good. It looks like it's shooting pretty good for me. Alright, not too bad. Trigger resets a little bit far forward, and I had that little quirk with the magazine release, but if I keep both thumbs forward, up, away from it, seems to do pretty good. Now, let's see how the 38 Special compares. That's a pretty good group. Might be kind of hard to beat with the revolver. So let's try. Alright, got my trusty old 342 PD revolver. We'll see what I can do from 7 yards with this. And we're hitting a little bit low, as typical with this particular revolver and me. Keep going. Alright, just a little bit low, just a little bit left, but certainly acceptable accuracy. This gun has always shot low for me compared to the point of aim, point of impact. Alright, now we're going to go through the chronograph and see what kind of velocity numbers we're getting between the 130 grain full metal jacket Remington UMC versus the 124 grain 9mm and the short barrel. I started out with this series doing the full metal jacket just to get a baseline with standard pressure in both. So we're certainly going to see more power with the 9mm, I have no doubt whatsoever with that. But when we start getting into later videos, when we start using plus P38s with lighter bullets, things will be a little bit different. So let's see what kind of velocity we're getting with the 9mm and 38 special with full metal jacket rounds. All right, let's see what we get for velocity with the 38 special. .774, 742, 763, 736. Maybe one more round. I didn't get a read with one of those. 741. Now let's see what we get with the 9mm short barrel. This is 6 grains lighter of a bullet, but still pretty close. See what kind of velocity we get. 1002. 988. 988. No read. 1006. 998. 1006. Alright, pretty good velocity gain. That's typically what I thought we would see. I thought maybe a little bit less velocity, but still getting 1,000 feet per second on a 124 grain bullet. That's pretty good. That's about like a 38 plus P out of a 4-inch barrel, but with just standard pressure out of a 3-inch barrel. So pretty good ballistic performance. Now let's see what happens when we hit the Juggernaut box, if that will translate any differently in damage, because that's the real question here. You can have more foot-pounds energy, but if it doesn't do more, and it's kind of a moot point. So let's see what the 9mm and the 38 special does to the baloney pack and into water jugs. Alright, let's see what we get with the 9mm full metal jacket from the 3-inch barrel Diamondback. See what it does to the baloney and how far penetration we get into water jugs. Now, this should be interesting. One day I'm hoping to hit that blanket on the back. I haven't done it yet, except once I believe. So let's try it. Yeah, that first water jug took on a lot of impact, as we can see with all that water coming out. And we hit the baloney pack, and it stayed together. It feels a little bit mushy. Exit hole is pretty small, as to be expected. And the damage to the baloney is very minimal, very minimal. I can almost reuse this pack. So let's see what we got in water jugs. Alright, the first water jug has quite a bit of damage. Jug 2 has even more damage than the first jug, which is pretty interesting. Impact's a little bit low on the jug, but it looks like it's going straight through. The impact on jug 3 is actually higher than on jug 2. Wouldn't expect that. And it looks like we went through those 3. It looks like we went through jug 4. We have an impact on 5. It looks like we got an exit on 5. And we got an impact on 6 for sure. And we got an exit hole out 6. And I heard the bullet, and there it is. I heard the bullet hit the wood there. And we stopped that bullet on the blanket backstop. I expected a lot, but not quite that much. That is a good amount of penetration. However, it didn't provide a lot of damage to the impacting point, but a lot of penetration for sure. Even through that fiber board. Now let's see how the 38 special compares. Alright, 38 special, full metal jacket. We'll see if I get through this. And this has a little bit of a flat point rather than just a pointed tip like the 9mm. So that flat tip and reduction in velocity might make a big difference here. We'll see what it does. Alright, very much like the 9mm. Shot placement is pretty much identical to the 9mm, a little bit low on the pack. The hole in the particle board, or fiber board I should say, looks very similar, and as to be expected, this is near identical to what we saw with the 9mm. Right, shot placement identical to the 9mm. A little bit less damage on the first jug. The second jug, it appears we're starting to move a little bit to the left. And here's the third jug. And it appears that we're tumbling just a little bit, either that or just kind of veering off. But we have an impact on jug 4 on the bottom. And it appears that we shot out the side of jug 4 and probably hit the side of the box in there, but I don't see an impact on jug 5, so I'm going to try to find that bullet. I wasn't sure where that bullet was at first, but I moved the blanket backstop and it kind of fell out of it. So it veered out of jug 4, probably hit the side of the juggernaut box, and then actually stuck into the blanket backstop. That's pretty interesting. If we would have went straight through without it veering off a little bit, we probably would have seen something similar. I don't think it would have went through all 6, but I think it probably would have at least went into jug 5. So what we're seeing here is a little bit less penetration, but similar performance to the water jugs. So that's pretty interesting. I really can't call this one. However, the 9mm has significantly more energy. Would that make a difference? Self-defense, just straight on hitting a torso? My thought is probably not. Now, if it was through the side, you'd probably have a better chance with a 9mm of it piercing through, but a straight on shot, I don't think there'd be any difference. Where we would get into a difference though is through like a hard barrier like car doors and stuff like that. We would see a little bit of a difference in the penetration. Now, let's shoot these out about 25 yards and we'll see what kind of accuracy we can get between the two. This should be very interesting. Alright, my final summary for the ballistics performance of this. I don't really have to take much time into this. What we're seeing here is with 38 Special versus 9mm, what we're seeing is that the 9mm delivers significantly more velocity. Right around 200, a little bit more than 200 feet per second more velocity with a bullet weight that's not that much lighter than the 38 Special's bullet. What we saw on the baloney packs and the water jugs was very similar though. So my overall takeaway on this is that when I have this little 9mm pistol, I know there's a lot of power there. However, I did have a little bit of hang up that was on my part because I'm not used to this pistol yet. A little bit of limp wristing, I would say, because one round failed to go back into battery. And a lot of recoil, a lot of felt recoil is actually more than what we see with this. However, I would say that the recoil with this particular pistol with the standard pressure ammo is about the same as a hotly loaded 38 plus P in this particular revolver. So overall today, what do I feel? I feel more comforting with my old revolver. It's got a nice big hoe grip. It fills my hand correctly. So any impact is kind of spread out over a little bit of a distance, as where this is a little bit snappier recoil, but it's not unbearable. It's nothing like a 357 Magnum Snubby or anything like that. It's not close to that. So overall, which one is better? It's kind of hard to say. I would say that today, the revolver is just a little bit better in my opinion because we don't have the reliability issues that can potentially happen. Even though they were on me, it still happened. What we saw with accuracy is a little bit better at long range. At close range, pretty similar accuracy. So it's kind of hard to say. I would not say that one is significantly better than the other. I would say that if we had to do a percent here, we would do this is 55% my choice, this is 45%. They're both pretty good. And if we got a little bit better performing ammunition, that might change the equation a little bit either way. So we'll see as we go through more hollow point ammunition through testing what we're going to get. But overall, I'd say today they're pretty equal options as far as concealability goes and all of that. I mean, they're both concealable. This one's more concealable for sure. But as for concealed carry, performance, all of that, what you need, I'd say pretty similar. So that's what you get today with the ballistic testing of the 9mm short barrel versus 38 Special standard pressure short barrel. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.